in shadow for my white blouse using a pale cool gray. I've already put a little bit of skin tone in where it would show through a bit of a transparency. Let's see, I'm thinking of my light source coming from my right. So the ruffles will cast shadows. Each ruffle will have its own shadow. Nice and loose. You don't want to be very tight. You want the blouse to look soft. I'm going to lay in a slightly darker shadow for contrast. This will give me more dimension. If I were not going to go back with gouache, I would not put in probably quite as dark a shadow, but I'm going to add back in some white so I can be a little bit bolder with this second tone. Now my blouse has some stitching and crisscross texture, so I'm creating that first in shadow, again using my gray. Back with my gouache and add highlights so I create the texture and the light. Again, keeping a very loose feeling. If I make it too exact, my blouse will become stiff. I'm adding back some white, giving highlights, blending a bit of the shadow, pulling out of the ruffles, defining the edges. All this makes my rendering look more dimensional. My black Prisma, of course, pulls out details, adds shadow to my texture. I'm going in, I've already laid in my first tone of my red satin skirt. You can see I've left highlights. Now my second tone is adding that nice strong shadow that a satin skirt will have. Ruffles again need to look loose and soft. It's important though that your drawing is precise so you know where to lay in your shadow. I don't have to do each ruffle, but I have to address the general shapes. To draw in a lace pattern, and lace tends to all be connected together in some way, so you can do it rather loosely but creating a nice curvaceous, graceful type of pattern. And then of course lace will have an edging and an inside pattern to each one of these forms. Lace patterns sit into a netting, so I'm going to add some texture, of course light netting in the lighter areas, and I'll leave some darker areas as well. Lost a bit of my pattern, plus lace, because it's slightly dimensional, will catch highlights. So I'm going to go back in and pull out the pattern with my gouache. This creates a delicate texture, also helps you rediscover your pattern. I'm also highlighting my ruffles, as satin has very strong highlights. I can pull out the edges. And then back in again with shadow. You can see you alternate finding lights and shadows and making sure that the ultimate contrast works.